The cafe was bustling with the usual mid-morning crowd as I sat across from Grace, watching her stir her coffee absent-mindedly. I tried to focus on the conversation, but something on the floor caught my eye: our business card. I leaned over to pick it up, and Grace flinched visibly. "What's this?" I asked, turning the card in my hand to read the bold print. It was a private investigator's card, complete with a phone number and a name I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat, confusion setting in. Grace's reaction was telling: too quick, too tense. "Oh, I don't know," she stammered, avoiding my gaze. "Maybe it's from someone at the next table." Her words were too hurried, her explanation too flimsy. My instinct screamed that something was off. I excused myself, needing a moment, and walked to the restroom with the card burning a hole in my pocket. Alone, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the card. But then, a different idea struck me. I took Grace's phone from her purse instead, crafting a message. "Good afternoon, how's the case going?" I texted the investigator, my fingers trembling slightly. The reply came within minutes, chilling in its implication: "Following up now. Your person is currently at a restaurant, enjoying a glass of wine." A cold wave of realization washed over me. We were at a coffee shop, not a restaurant. The person he was following couldn't be Grace. It dawned on me then: Grace was not just unfaithful, she had turned the tables on us both. The private investigator was for my lover, whom she suspected as well. I returned to the table, my face a mask of calm I didn't feel. "Who is he following, Grace?" I asked quietly, sliding her phone across the table. Her face paled, her eyes wide with shock. I thought she was cheating on me with you," she whispered. The layers of betrayal unfolded, each one more painful than the last. Grace had suspected her own lover, my lover, of infidelity and had taken steps to catch her in the act. And all the while, she had been my closest companion, my wife. The cafe around us seemed to fade into a blur as I processed the duplicity. The hurt was profound, a betrayal not just of marriage, but of trust and shared secrets. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a scrape. "Grace, this is the end for us," I declared, the finality in my voice echoing my resolve. "I cannot live with this deceit," explanation too flimsy, tears streaming down her face, but I turned away. In the days that followed, my plan took shape, a cold, calculated revenge that would leave her with nothing but the remnants of her duplicity. Our divorce was swift, and the life we had built together crumbled under the weight of her choices. As I walked away from what was once our home, the bitter taste of betrayal lingered. But there was also relief, a freedom from the web of lies that had ensnared us both. We never saw each other again, and while the pain remained, it was a necessary end to a chapter marked by deceit. The ink was barely dry on the divorce papers when I started to put my plan into action. The betrayal had left a bitter taste in my mouth, but revenge was a dish best served cold. I needed to ensure that Grace felt the full impact of her deceit. I began by reaching out to her circle of friends, the ones who had been complicit in her lies, or so I believed. With a few well-placed words and hints of Grace's infidelity, doubts began to seed among them. It wasn't long before whispers started, and the trust they had in her wavered. One evening, I staged a run-in at a popular local bar where I knew Grace would be attempting to regain some semblance of her social life. I walked in, flanked by mutual friends who were now doubting her as much as I did. "Grace," I called out, my voice calm but loud enough to draw attention. The crowd parted slightly, and there she was, a glass of wine in hand, her expression turning from surprise to dread. "Can we talk?" I asked, though it was more of a demand. She nodded, hesitantly stepping aside to a quieter corner. The murmurs around us grew louder, fueled by the scene unfolding. "Why did you do it, Grace?" "Why him?" I pressed, needing to hear her reasoning, however twisted it might be. "It wasn't planned, I swear. Things just happened," she stammered, her eyes darting around, seeking an ally in the crowd. "There was none." "I thought you were cheating too." "That doesn't justify your actions, nor your methods," I snapped, the anger bubbling up again. You pulled me into your games. You shattered everything we built, based on your suspicions. I turned to leave, but not before adding, you'll see how it feels, Grace. You'll understand the pain you've caused. Over the next few weeks, I intensified my efforts. I contacted her employer under the guise of a concerned anonymous client, hinting at unprofessional behaviors and possible breaches of company ethics. It was deceitful, yes, but it paled in comparison to her own duplicity. Grace's professional reputation began to crumble as her employer started an internal investigation. Her job, once her pride, was hanging by a thread. I watched from the sidelines, my heart hardening with each step of her downfall. Meanwhile, I used social media to further paint a picture of her infidelity. Photos and posts, strategically leaked to mutual acquaintances, ensured that her social isolation grew. She began losing friends, one by one, as the trust they once had in her evaporated. One afternoon, I saw her at the park, sitting alone on a bench. Her eyes were hollow, her spirit seemingly broken. I approached, my footsteps deliberate. "Do you see now?" I asked, standing before her, my shadow casting over her figure. "Do you understand the consequences of betrayal?" Grace looked up at me, her face a mask of sorrow and regret. "I do. I'm sorry. I never wanted any of this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I wish I could believe that," I replied coldly, turning away from her broken form. As I walked away, I felt a twinge of satisfaction mixed with an aching sorrow. The revenge was complete, but the victory was hollow. The intrigue of our entangled lives continued to unravel, setting the stage for further developments that neither of us could foresee. The weeks following Grace's public and professional downfall were tumultuous. I had watched from a distance, content to see her world unravel as she had once unraveled mine. Yet, as the days passed, a nagging feeling of emptiness began to take root within me. The satisfaction of revenge was fleeting, and in its wake, a hollow void remained. One brisk evening, as I walked through the dimly lit streets of our neighborhood, I spotted Grace exiting a small, nondescript building that hosted community support groups. She looked frail, her form shadowed under the streetlights. My footsteps halted, a sudden impulse urging me to confront her again, to maybe find closure in this saga of betrayal. "Grace!" I called out, my voice cutting through the chill of the night air. She turned, her face pale, eyes widening in a mix of surprise and fear. "Have you come to gloat?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Isn't your revenge complete?" I approached, stopping a few feet away, my hands clenched in my pockets. "I came to see if you understand the gravity of your actions," I replied, my voice stern, yet not without a trace of sorrow. Grace sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I understand more than you think. I've lost everything, not just you or my job. My friends, my dignity. I'm attending therapy now, trying to make sense of all this mess." The stark honesty in her words struck a chord in me. "And what have you learned?" I asked, genuinely curious despite my resentment. "That I was wrong," she admitted, looking me straight in the eyes. "About a lot of things. About us. I let paranoia drive me to make the worst decisions of my life." Her admission brought no joy, only a deep, resonant pain that echoed our lost years. "Do you think you can rebuild?" I found myself asking, the anger subsiding into a morose curiosity. "I have to try," she responded, her voice stronger now. "Even if it's from nothing. I owe it to myself, and I owe you an apology, not that it changes anything." We stood there, the night air filled with the tense peace of our confrontation. Finally, I nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement if not forgiveness. "Apology accepted," I said, and meant it. As I turned to leave, a new thought emerged, unbidden but clear. "Grace, take care of yourself," I added, not looking back, my words floating back to her like a leaf on the wind. The walk home felt longer than usual, my mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. The layers of our past, woven through love and pain, seemed to unravel a bit more with each step. I knew that the path of retribution I had chosen was fraught with its own perils, a lesson in the futility of vengeance. The night grew deeper, the stars above a tapestry of light against the dark canvas of the sky. As I reached my door, the finality of our last encounter settled in. Our story, a tangled narrative of love, betrayal, and retribution, was now truly at an end, leaving behind lessons learned and scars that might never fully heal. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to walk it, free from the shadows of the past. The weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air, thick and suffocating. I had spent weeks contemplating my next move after my encounter with Grace, haunted by the realization that her infidelity had deeper roots than I had imagined. My revenge, initially calculated and cold, now felt insufficient. I needed to make her understand the true cost of her actions, and that meant going beyond mere social retribution. It began one evening as I watched Grace's social media feeds, monitoring the remnants of her life, the new friends she had tried to cultivate, the laughter that seemed forced in photos. But there, beneath the surface, I noticed something that twisted in my gut, the unmistakable presence of my former lover, the one Grace had suspected. They had been spending time together, and my rage boiled over. I decided to confront them both, to lay bare the reality of their betrayal. I arranged a meeting at a local bar under the guise of patching things up, a perfect opportunity to unveil my plan. I texted Grace, luring her with promises of a civil conversation. "Let's talk about everything. I think we can clear the air," I wrote. She responded almost immediately, her eagerness palpable. "Okay. Let's meet at our old spot." As I arrived, my heart raced, not from nerves, but from the anticipation of revenge. I positioned myself at a corner table, strategically placed to observe both entrances. I ordered a drink, feigning casualness while my mind raced with plans. Minutes later, Grace walked in, her eyes searching the room until they locked onto me. Beside her, my former lover, Claire, approached, her presence both a spark and a match to my inner fire. The moment they settled into the booth across from me, I leaned in, a smile plastered on my face. "I'm glad you both could make it. I thought we could clear the air," I said, my voice smooth but laced with an undercurrent of malice. "What do you mean?" Grace asked, confusion flickering in her eyes. I laughed, a dark, mirthless sound. "Let's not play games. You've both betrayed me in ways I could never have imagined. Grace, you hired a private investigator to spy on your lover, my lover. And Claire, you played both sides while I thought you were my confidant." Their expressions morphed from confusion to realization, panic creeping into their features. "What are you talking about?" Claire stammered. "You should know the truth," I replied, my voice lowering to a menacing whisper. "I've seen the messages, the plans you made behind my back. You thought I wouldn't find out?" Grace's face turned white. "You're wrong." "I didn't." "Save it," I interrupted, standing up. The bar felt smaller, the walls closing in on them. "You both are so intertwined in this web of deceit. And now, it's time for retribution." With a swift motion, I pulled out my phone, activating the hidden cameras I had planted in our previous shared spaces, our old apartment, the bar, even at Claire's workplace. The footage I had collected over the weeks showcased their secretive meetings, their lies laid bare in high definition. "Look at this," I said, playing the video for them to see. "You think you can escape the consequences of your choices? I'm going to make sure everyone knows who you really are." The chaos erupted as both women began to protest, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of denials and excuses. But I had reached my breaking point, and the pent-up fury surged within me. "You think this ends here?" I snarled. "You've ruined my life, and I'm going to ensure you pay for every sleepless night, every moment of doubt I've faced because of you." I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I prepared for the ultimate act of vengeance. I had spent too long plotting my retribution to let fear hold me back. "I'll expose you to everyone, your friends, your family. I'll make sure you're both ostracized." Grace reached out, her hand trembling as she pleaded, "Please, don't do this. We can work something out." "No," I said, my voice cold as ice. "This isn't about working things out. It's about making you feel the pain you've inflicted on me. You won't get away with it. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of their faces, fear, regret, and a flicker of understanding. I had drawn my line in the sand, severing the last threads of our connection. The door swung shut behind me, echoing through the bar like a final goodbye. I walked away, each step a release of the burdens I had carried for so long. I was free, liberated from the shackles of betrayal, yet weighed down by the shadows of our shared past. As I stepped into the cool night air, I realized that this was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, a life no longer tainted by lies and deceit. I had taken my stand, and in doing so, I severed ties that would never be mended again. The path ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a sense of peace. I would move on, stronger and wiser, carrying the lessons learned from a tangled web of betrayal. The past was now a ghost, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future had in store for me.